Hello guys, welcome you all to the 17th session of Pandas Dataframe. So in this session, we are going to discuss a slightly advanced concept of drop any with subset. Subset is basically one parameter which we are going to use inside the drop any method. So first of all, what I have done, let's import this code. So let's import this code. Thereafter, I have created one toy data frame. So those of you who are present here, I have pinged the code to all of you. And those of you who are watching the recorded session, you can pause the video and first create this data frame. So that's all, or everything will be available on GitHub. You can also copy that from there. And let's see what my data frame contains. So this is my data frame, toy data frame I have created. Now I'm going to use this data frame to discuss these concepts. So let's discuss. So basically, when I'm talking about this subset is also one parameter. The subset is a parameter. So let's recall what we have discussed in the last session of the drop any. So if let's say in this data frame, which I have created just now, right now, if I will use df dot drop any, what will happen? We know these things from my previous sessions. So if we run this drop any on this new data frame, what will happen? We'll see that rows leveled 1 and 2 are getting dropped. So why this is getting dropped? Because by default, this drop any parameter is set to axis is set to 0 and how parameter is set to any. We know from our previous session. This is just a recall of your previous session. By default, the axis is equal to 0 and how parameter is equal to any. How parameter is set to any. So if you use this, I'm getting the same thing, which I'm getting because this is my default values of the parameter. So what I'm doing here, axis is equal to 0 means I'm talking about the row level, and how is equal to any means any one of the level row which is having at least one NaN value dropping. It means that. So these rows, this row and this row is having the NaN value. So these two rows get dropped and I am getting 0 and 3 row level 0 and 3 I am getting as my output. Everything is fine here because we have discussed this thing. Now comes the next thing, that is the subset parameter. This is called the subset parameter. This is the main agenda of our discussion today. So let's understand this. So for our use of drop NA has impacted the entire data frame, right? Just like this, use of this df drop NA is impacting the entire data frame. So we call on the method on the data frame itself df drop NA, and it is applied to all of its rows and columns. So here we will understand this subset parameter, which gives us a way to restrict this drop NA to only a handful of rows or column levels that we choose. So let's give it a try. I'm taking one example to make you understand this thing. So this is my, I have already created this data frame, toy data frame. So let's df dot drop NA. Let's write this. And let's say axis is equal to 0, by this is a default thing we know. And how is equal to write any. This is also my default value we know. Now let's see, there's one another parameter called subset. So here I am going to give this inside this subset parameter. I am going to give something called gender. So these are the default values which we know already. Even if we leave it, it won't make any difference. Then this subset parameter, I will specify, I'm specifying here inside this the subset parameter, a list. And what is the value inside this list? Gender. And if so, what is happening here? If let's say first run this, then I will explain you. So let's see what has happened. Let me access my original data frame here so that it is convenient to me to understand if we keep both. Fine. So can you see which one of the rows get dropped? My second row, this row was dropped. So what happened here? So just like the above, what we were doing here, we were saying drop axis is equal to 0. That means we are saying drop all rows which have at least one NaN. Because I am putting how parameter is equal to any. So basically I am saying drop all rows which have at least one NaN. But now this subset parameter is saying, but now look at the gender column to make this determination. When you are dropping all the rows having any NaN value, having any NaN values, you should look for the gender column to make this determination. So by using this subset parameter, we are telling Pandas to turn a blend I to all the other columns in this data frame, all the other columns in this data frame, and only look for names in gender. So when I'm asking here, so see here, this gender column is having, if this NaN value, so this row is getting dropped. And this row is also having NaN values, but this is not getting dropped. This row is having NaN values, but this is not getting dropped because here gender column is making the determination which rows you need to be dropped. So subset is equal to gender when I am pitting. So this column is basically making a decision. Fine. So only one value inside this column is NaN. So this row will get dropped. Other rows will remain untouched. Hope this is clear for you. Now, if let's say here, instead of this thing, gender column, if you use something else, if you use some other column, then check it by using some other column. Let's see what happens. If I will say the drop and I will set this subset value from gender to, let's say, age. So now what will happen? My age column will decide which row to get dropped. If you will see, only this inside this age column, only this row, which is having an index value of 1, is having NaN values, at least one NaN values. So this means this row will get dropped. So let's run this and see, is this thing true or not? Can you see? This one row is getting dropped. All other rows, 0, 2, and 3 is I'm getting as it is. So hope this example is clear for you. Now, let's see one thing. For the next example, just I am accessing this data frame, my original, so that I'm keeping it for my reference. Now what I want to do, now let's now flip the axis to 1. Here I was using the axis is equal to 0. Now I am asking you to flip the axis to 1. So far we have been working with the row axis. Now let's look at the column axis. So what I will do, I will write df dot drop na and use the axis is equal to, changes the axis is equal to 1 and keep hoy is equal to any. And this time, let's say I'm not using right now, I'm not using this subset parameter. Fine. So if I will simply use this, what will happen? Drop na axis is equal to 1. So it will look for the axis. My axis is 1. That means it will look for the column. So if you will see, all my column is having at least one NaN values. So I will get nothing. This data frame will, this thing will return me empty data frame. Can you see? All my columns are getting dropped here. Now, one key important thing that you should remember here is that when we are using this subset, we are expected to always specify labels that are orthogonal to our main axis. This is the word of the lecture. Orthogonal word of this session is orthogonal. Orthogonal. Fine. Which means kind of at right angles. So previously we had axis 0, which is the index axis. And so we gave subset column labels because we have axis. So we gave column labels as my subset. But now our drop is a axis. Now what is our drop? Drop is a axis. So what shall be my subset? Definitely my subset will be rows. Let me make you understand one more time. See, here I have to give. So, so earlier I was making my determination or decision. I am taking the decision based on my column axis. Here, this gender axis. Here my this gender, and here my age. Before that, age was there. Now, when I'm giving this subset 0, 2, so what I'm going to do? So I'm going to take my decision. This 0 and this 2 rows, these 2 rows, this row and this row is going to make the determination of my drop things. Whatever values that is getting dropped, it is making the decision from here. So let's say, let's understand in this way. If let's say, just think for a while and see what will be my output before running this code. Df that drop na axis is equal to 1. That means I am considering this column axis and I am taking this subset 0 and 2. Can you see? This 0 index has any NaN values? No. This 2 index has any NaN values? Yes. This is having. So this gender column will get dropped this time. Because this, if I am making this as my subset, this is doesn't have any NaN values. So it will remain intact. But this 2 is having NaN values in the gender column. So this entire column will get dropped. And I will get only age and height. So let's run this thing and see. Am I getting the same thing? Definitely I'm getting the same thing. So that's all. Hope you have understood these things. So that was the subset parameter. So what subset parameter does? It allows us to fine tune and localize the effect of dropping a two set of columns or row level or a set of levels that we specify that we want this method to be applied on. So that's all for today for this session. Let me just commit the code. So drop and drop NA with subset. Subset. Subset discussed. Fine, let's commit the code. Let's save this once again. Commit the code. Yes. Sync changes. Okay. Fine, that's all for the day. Keep learning, keep smiling. See you in the next session. Bye. Take care.